so many people in a consultation will say to me when I ask them about their diet, they'll say, oh, I've got a pretty good diet, I eat pretty well, I eat quite healthily. And their perception isn't accurate as to what they're actually doing. So they may think that certain foods are healthy, but once they start tracking those foods, they realize that the macronutrient balance isn't good, or they're not getting what they need from that food, or maybe the calories from that is much higher than they expect. Also, people don't necessarily realize the quantity or the portion sizes that they're putting onto their plate. So once you start weighing and measuring and then quantifying that, putting that into your calorie tracker and your macronutrient tracker, you see that what you thought was a realistic portion size was actually much larger, or if you're trying to gain weight, maybe much smaller than you need to achieve your goals. So once you start accurately logging everything that you are consuming, and that includes drinks and all of those little snacks as well that people often forget when they're thinking about their healthy eating. They forget that they're having a flapjack that they picked up from the garage, or dessert after dinner, or on the weekend they'll have copious amounts of alcohol. Once you start logging that and seeing that effect on your numbers, generally you will make better decisions. So if you have done nothing else in this challenge, and all you've done is started to track your food, you've made a huge step into improving your dietary habits. The second part of the phase was introducing that planning element into that, and we did that in phase 3 as well. And that's really starting to get into the habit of planning meals. So we started in phase 2 by just adding breakfast and dinner. And that's a really important factor, because then you start getting into habits of building shopping lists based on what you're going to be eating. Takes out a lot of those bad decisions that people make when they have to think about what they're going to eat, and they leave themselves to they're hungry, and then when they're hungry they come to dinner time and all bets are off. Any kind of bad food choices are made. So the second phase, super important. Get into the habit of planning at least 2 of your meals per day. The meals that you can control, lunch, taking lunch to work is a big meal you can control. Everyone can control their breakfast as well. Dinners, you should be able to control most of your dinners, but if you can get in a habit of planning at least a couple of meals a day, everything that's in your hands, and that's going to make a big difference. So if you can do that, if you can plan the majority of your meals, you're going to make a huge change, especially if you're taking your time to build your shopping list and you're going shopping following the guidelines I said, which is obviously don't do it when you're hungry or tired. Try and do it at a good point of your day after a meal, so you make better decisions when you're actually in the supermarket. Or better still, just order online, because then you haven't got the temptation of the shelves staring at you if you really can't resist the temptation of walking past the biscuit aisle or the sweet aisle or the crisp, whatever it is you go to. The next phase in the challenge was tracking and looking at your calories for that week. So we started to make sure that we're hitting a calorie target, and therefore we had to plan all of our meals to stay inside that calorie number. As we add on different elements, obviously adds more detail, but calories are a very good, simple way of making sure that you're keeping your quantities at a realistic number to achieve your goals. Like I say, every layer we add adds a layer more complexity. The key thing is, if you can't go as complex as that, then make sure you're doing at least phase 1, which is tracking everything. If you can do that, then move on to phase 2, which is starting to plan meals, and then phase 3 is starting to try to stay within calorie numbers and planning your entire week in advance. If you stopped at phase 3, you'd have, and you stuck with the making sure you're tracking and measuring everything, you should see some really good results. And like I said before, once you start putting calories into the equation and you start logging that on a regular basis and planning on a regular basis, you can then make much more informed decisions when it comes to your calorie intake. In other words, if you're not seeing results, you can look at changing that calorie intake slightly to make sure that you're hitting your results that you need. So it is a good level to get to make sure that you're getting more results. Now, we talked in phase 4 about adding in the macronutrient balance. And again, the more detailed we go, the more confident I feel in you actually achieving your results. So once you start making sure you're hitting your protein numbers, you're hitting your fat numbers, and you're keeping your carbohydrate numbers lower than for most people. A lot of people, they generally have those numbers too high and the protein numbers too low. Again, you will see an improvement. And this really also has a bigger influence on your performance as well, your performance in terms of your ability to get stronger, faster, recover better. The macronutrient balance has a big effect on that. So we're adding a layer of complexity. It's fourth on my list of importance. If you've got to that phase and you're tracking it, that's great. And like I say, I don't really want to be, giving you super complex things to do, but this is one little thing to think about in all of this is your meal timings and how you're consuming your food. So if your goal, and the majority of people's goal, is to get leaner and to lose body fat, then we need to look at our meal timings if you're not seeing the results you want, or if you want to maybe refine your results a bit more. And what you need to understand when we're talking about losing body fat is how that actually happens. And the key thing to remember when we're trying to lose body fat is that we need glucagon, which is a hormone that is produced to release energy from the fat cells in the body. And glucagon is produced on the intake of protein. So we definitely need protein in our system. The other thing that is really important is that if we have glycogen in the body, now let me just explain to those of you that maybe don't know what glycogen is. When you eat carbohydrates, it is stored in the body as glycogen. So when you eat sugars, which is what basically comes from carbohydrates, it is stored in the body as glycogen. And glycogen is incredibly important because it is our instant energy source. It is a bit like, I calculate this as, if you think about it like money, glycogen is like your cash, okay? Instant access account, you go in there, you take the cash out, and it's ready to go. Now that's great. Fat is more like a savings account. We need to actually work a little bit harder to get the energy from the fat cells. So we need to do a bit more to get that out. So it's a bit harder to do that. So we need glycogen because often we will need energy instantly, especially if we are performing workouts that require a high level of intensity like we see in a CrossFit workout. So during that workout, you will need glycogen. If you're working on a slower rate, more of a long endurance piece, you can get away with less glycogen, believe it or not, because you can start to run in a more fat burning state. But yes, you need glycogen, especially for higher intensity workouts. And if you're looking to optimize performance, you definitely need carbohydrates in your system. But if you're looking to burn fat outside of those workout windows, you need to be depleted of glycogen because your body will always go to the easiest source of energy. And if there is glycogen in the body, your body will use that for its energy first. That's going to be the stores that it uses. So if you have loads of carbohydrates throughout the day, you're never really going to be able to lose weight because you're always topping up those levels of glycogen. So the fat that you have in your system, and obviously I'm simplifying here, but this is the best way for you to think about this happening in your body. If you have glycogen in your body, why would your body go through the extra process of breaking down your fat cells to get energy out when it's got an instant energy source available? And that is the key thing. The fat cells are like the reserve energy. If you have glycogen, your body's going to use that energy first. So this comes into play in terms of your meal timings. And the other thing that needs to happen as well is that glucagon, which is what's going to break the fat cells down and use the energy from those fat cells, it can't be present in the presence of insulin. It's only present in the absence of insulin. So when you've just eaten carbohydrates, sugars, those sort of things, your body will release insulin, and therefore it won't release glucagon because it will have insulin. So therefore, if you want to be breaking fats down, You can't be doing that immediately after you've had carbohydrates. And if you've got glycogen in the body throughout that time, your body will not break the fat cells down. So we need to make sure that we have periods in our day where we have low levels of glycogen or no glycogen in the system, so that our body will start tapping in to those fatty reserves. What that means is that the old adage of eat multiple times a day, loads of small meals, little and often, does not work in losing weight. Okay, it does not work, and it's, you can see evidence of that everywhere. Okay, it will not work in losing weight. Some people may find out, but there may be people that are super active. Okay, that are eating little and often, but they're always on the go. Then they're always going to be burning off that glycogen, and therefore there will be times in their day where they will be into that kind of fat burning state, if I want to simplify it that way. For most of us, this means that we need to make sure that we have some periods of the day where we are not consuming food in general, really, but especially carbohydrates. So the 3 meals a day option is good for most people in that we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and as little snacking as possible. That's what I would recommend to most people. So snacking throughout the day is not going to help you in terms of fat loss. We need to be keeping that space between the meals, which is why people achieve a lot of success with the intermittent fasting, 5-2, all those sort of diets as well, because they're giving their body little windows with which they either have no glycogen, and therefore the body will tap into those fatty reserves. So think about that when you're planning your meal in advance, and that you want to make sure that you have spaces in the day where you may feel a little bit hungry and your body will be tapping into those fatty reserves. Now, when you're working out, you need to make sure that you've had carbohydrates prior to that if you're looking to maximize your performance. So if you are working out, for most people, it's important to have some carbohydrates around that workout. That being said, if you have carbohydrates the night before, and you're not a breakfast person and you don't want to get up or you train super early in the morning, you're not going to burn off those glycogen, that glycogen while you're sleeping. Okay, your body's not going to require instant energy while you're lying in bed. So don't be thinking, oh my God, I must have carbs first thing in the morning if you're training first thing in the morning, because you will have glycogen from the night before. But it's just important that you have some glycogen in the system for those workouts, because your body will tap into those. There is some evidence suggests that having small amount of carbohydrates with your proteins after a workout as well can help for that protein muscle synthesis. So in other words, help you to grow muscle and get lean tissue. So there can be a small intake when you're having protein after a workout. Then having some carbs with that is also a good idea, and that's why generally sticking to the 33% of each macronutrient is a good philosophy to have for all of your meals, because you're going to get that good blend throughout the day. But yeah, in terms of meal timing, just think about spacing your meals out so there is periods of the day where you're not eating, you're not grazing throughout that day, so your body isn't constantly producing insulin, isn't constantly have plentiful reserves of stored glycogen. So your body can actually require to tap into those fat cells, and you can burn those off. That's really all you need to know about meal timing, in that you need to make sure you have carbohydrates, glycogen in the system, so carbohydrates in the system for around high intensity workouts. You need to make sure that you're sticking with your macronutrient blend, but you need to make sure you have spaces in the day for your body to burn fat if you're looking to get leaner, which the vast majority of us are. If you're looking to get bigger, then little and often, can be the answer, okay? Because you don't want to lose weight, you want to gain weight. So if you're looking to gain weight, then you can eat little and often, you can eat loads of meals a day. And that's where some people maybe got that idea from, is that they were looking at bodybuilders and looking at the wrong part of the bodybuilder's diet and taking that on board. But for the rest of us, 2 to 3 meals a day. If you do need a snack, keep it small, so we're not having messages about, and also keep that same blend of macronutrients, or even if you want to be even more effective, have a lower carbohydrate snack. So have a snack that has maybe a large percentage of fats and proteins, and a smaller amount of carbohydrates in there. With all of this stuff, there is an individual element to it in that you have to find what works best for you depending on how you're training and what results you're getting, because some people do require sort of slightly different eating habits. That being said though, just because you try it for 2 days and you feel hungry in those times doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means you're getting used to that. If your body's used to eating, 9, 10 times a day because you're just having snacks throughout the day, and you suddenly say, right, I'm going to eat at 7 a.m., 1 p.m., 6:30 p.m., then yes, your body may well feel very different, but a lot of that, you've got to understand, is a psychological need for food. But like people that any other habits, they'll want to do the same thing, or smoke a cigarette or whatever they do, or have a coffee at 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. whatever. It's just a lot of those times it's habits as well. So you need to differentiate between what's a habit and what's actually a real need. Experiment with it. Ask any questions. I know that sometimes I ramble on, so ask me any questions in the comments or email. I'm happy to answer those. Add it in to your thoughts when you're planning your food, but don't overcomplicate it, okay? Because I want you to, like I say, think about the priorities of what we need to happen. Is that the most important thing I want all of you to make sure you're doing is, number one, tracking your food and weighing and measuring. If you do that alone and nothing else, you're going to get better results than if you miss that phase out. So that phase is the most important thing you must always make sure you're doing when you're looking to make a change to your body composition or maintain it at the same rate. Second most important is to start planning your meals and producing a shopping list. So make sure that you're doing that as well before you start worrying about anything after that. Then you can start thinking about the calorie numbers, making sure you're hitting those calorie numbers. Obviously, and this is the logical part of it, is that you can't think about calorie numbers if you're not weighing and measuring your food, because you're not going to get accurate numbers. So number 3, hit your calorie numbers. If you've done all those first 3, then great. Then you can add the 4th element of starting to think about macros and proteins, carbs, fats, and think about that. If you've done all of those correctly and you can stick to those, then you can start thinking about meal timings as well, but not at the expense of everything else. All right, guys. Well, I hope that helps. I hope you're finding this content useful in your diet and nutrition, and you're seeing some results. Like I say, happy to answer any questions you have, and I shall speak to you all very soon.